Straight ahead on Law and Crime Daily, a Los Angeles police officer attacked in his own precinct.
You got my gun. What? You got my gun.
How officers captured the suspect.
And a foiled plot to kidnap the Michigan governor. Why state and federal authorities are charging 13 men with terrorism.
An actual criminal conspiracy, or was it a bunch of rejects sitting around in a basement just talking fantasy?
Plus, rapper Torey Lanes is charged with shooting fellow rapper Megan Thee Stallion. And on appeal court to hear the latest in Bill Cosby's case. Law and Crime Daily covers court cases from coast to coast. Welcome everyone to Law and Crime Daily. I'm Brian Buckmire along with Terri Austin. We begin with the shocking body cam video from a Los Angeles police officer. Investigators say Jose Guzman walked into a police station and attacked an officer. Guzman is accused of wrestling with the officer, stealing his weapon, and pistol whipping the officer. The officer is seen bleeding as a suspect sits with him and his own gun. Several shots were fired, but no one was hit. Guzman fled the scene and was later arrested. He's facing multiple charges, including attempted murder of a law enforcement officer. Here's some of the body cam video.
Out here.
Hey!
You got my gun.
What?
You got my gun.
Guzman was taken into custody following a non-categorical use of force. The officer's loaded 9mm Beretta semi-automatic pistol was recovered from Guzman's vehicle. The LAFD paramedics also responded to the station and transported the injured officer to a local hospital where he was medically treated for non-life-threatening injuries and was later released.
And now to Michigan, where authorities have charged 13 men with plotting to kidnap the governor. Law and Crime Daily's Terri Austin has combed through the criminal complaints and has more for us. Terri?
Brian, state and federal law enforcement teamed up to unravel this alleged massive plan that is being called domestic terrorism. According to the indictment, the men plotted to storm the state capitol building, overthrow the Michigan government, and take Governor Gretchen Whitmer hostage. FBI agents say they also overheard the men talking about using Molotov cocktails to destroy police vehicles. Some of the individuals are believed to be part of a rogue militia group. Michigan attorney Jamie White told me his brother was one of the arresting officers.
The conspirators to kidnap discussed, attacking police stations, blowing up bridges, doing things to interfere, with the law enforcement response to the actual kidnapping, while the other group actually were targeted because it became known to law enforcement that they were seeking the addresses of certain law enforcement officers here in the state of Michigan. In fact, but for the immediacy of needing to thwart this plan, I suspect that law enforcement probably would have followed these individuals for as long as they could. But obviously, the governor's life and her family is more important than anything. So they stepped in.
More secrecy in the case against the woman known as the Madam to the millionaire pedophile Jeffrey Epstein. Federal prosecutors are seeking to keep evidence hidden against Ghislaine Maxwell. They're citing to a connection to the ongoing sex trafficking case against Jeffrey Epstein as a reason to withhold documents and photos from the defense team that apparently identify victims abused by Epstein. Prosecutors want a judge to allow them not to hand over the evidence until 8 weeks before the start of Maxwell's trial, saying the scope of the Epstein investigation is not currently public. Criminal defense attorney and law and crime legal analyst Gigi Gonzalez says defendants have a constitutional right to confront their accusers.
So it's important for the prosecutors to deliver this evidence. However, this is not an unusual situation, especially when you have special victims such as minors, involved in this case. So the judge is going to have to balance out the constitutional right of the defendant to be able to prepare adequately for trial, and also the victim's right to not have their information, dispersed throughout the public. And this is a very high profile case where any information that comes out about this case is going to be received on an international level. So it's a very important balance. But I do think that, the prosecutors in this case, asking the judge to consider allowing them releasing this information to the defense within 8 weeks of the trial, I don't think is reasonable. The defense deserves an ample amount of time, or a reasonable amount of time, to prepare a defense for what's going to be a very long-winded trial.
The 17-year-old accused of murdering 2 people and injuring a third after crossing state lines for a protest in Wisconsin is fighting extradition. Kyler Rittenhouse appeared in court virtually as his defense argued that their client is being treated unfairly and that extradition would be the same as turning him over to the mob. Rittenhouse is charged with shooting 3 people at a protest in Kenosha, Wisconsin. People there took to the streets after the police shooting of Jacob Blake. Rittenhouse was arrested at his home in Illinois. His defense says he was defending himself during the protest. Terry, let's come to you first. The defense is making a lot of constitutional and procedural arguments against extradition. Do you see any of these arguments working?
I don't think they're going to work, Brian. The arguments against extradition usually include the wrong identity, or the fact that the defendant has never been charged with the crime, or even insufficient allegations. I guess you could make a constitutional argument under the 14th Amendment that he is being deprived of life, liberty, or property. That's sort of a catch-all, that there wasn't, due process. But I don't think that argument is going to prevail. And even if we did, we'd never been able to get defendants to the state that we need to get defendants. So I don't think it's going to prevail.
All right, Dina, I want to thank you first for joining us today. And I want to ask you this question. Kyler Rittenhouse has become a polarizing figure in America. He's a patriot to some, alleged murderer to others. Could politics be affecting his potential safety as he's scheduled to move from a juvenile detention center to a jail for adults?
It's possible. Like you said, he has gained notoriety by inserting himself into what was already a national story. But they know how to protect people, even in prison, and he might end up in a more safe location within the prison. That happens a lot with celebrities as well, because it is true, if you have some sort of notoriety, your safety in a prison could get affected.
Makes sense. To see if there's any kind of special consideration because of that notoriety. Still ahead on Law&Crime Daily, actor and comedian Bill Cosby's appeal will be heard by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. And later on, the Iowa mother accused of strangling her 5-year-old daughter with a pair of pajamas faces a retrial. Who will decide Kelsey Thomas's fate? We'll discuss after this break. An Iowa mother accused of strangling her 5-year-old daughter to death with a pair of pajama pants is getting a new trial. A jury acquitted Kelsey Thomas of child endangerment but was hung on the murder charge. Firefighters found Chloe Thomas dead in her bedroom on July 19, 2018. Thomas told detectives she put Chloe down for a nap around 1:30 p.m. and then settled down for a nap herself. When she awoke, she says she found her daughter dead in the closet and called 911. Prosecutors say the defendant confessed to the murder. The defense argued the confession was coerced.
She jumped in her bed, and as I was coming, I came into the room, and she had jumped out of her bed, and I tried to grab her arm, and she slipped out of my arm, and went right out of her bedroom. I grabbed the pants, and I just went like this, and I pulled. She was everywhere. She was, like I said, I tried to grab her arm, which stopped her, and then she turned, got my arm out, or got her arm out of my hand. So I grabbed the pants, and I swung over her, and then when I pulled, I don't know, honestly, if I twisted, or, I know she had turned around. And we started to fall backwards. So I picked her up, and I laid her on her bed, and I held her down, and I told her, I was like, you need to go to sleep.
The medical examiner ruled Chloe's manner of death as a homicide, but the defense won a motion to prevent that testimony from coming in court. However, the medical examiner was able to testify that Chloe's cause of death was strangulation.
There was injury of the carotid arteries just above where the clavicles are. So it's lower than I would expect with a typical suspension. It's on both sides of the neck, and it's more common with strangulation, a manual strangulation type of injury. There was, in fact, a struggle. Chloe had been moving, her mom had been moving, and the pants, which were essentially the ligature, would have been in a position to shift on her neck as the bodies shifted in their movement. Chloe turned, which would account for some of that injury in the back of her neck as well as the front.
On cross, the defense wanted to know whether the medical examiner relied on the defendant's alleged confession to reach those conclusions.
I think that the story is completely consistent with the sequence of events that are described with an asphyxial death, such as strangulation or suspension. It was more my autopsy findings, the irregular ligature furrow that was upwardly canted but associated with internal injuries, including the petechiae of the larynx, the vocalis muscle hemorrhage, the asphyxial evidence of neuropathology that was more in keeping with the second story than the first story, which would have been a sling-like apparatus.
All right, Dina, you got to explain this one to me. The defense got a hung jury on the top charge and an acquittal on the lower charge. This time, a judge will decide her fate. What do you make of this strategy to do a bench trial rather than a jury trial when they had so much positive outcomes on the first time?
Yeah, very surprising, and especially surprising that they acquitted of the lesser charge. You'd think actually the reverse would have happened, and I wonder if the coronavirus timing had anything to do with that. This judge must have, throughout the first trial, seemed sympathetic toward the defense in terms of the ruling that judge made in order for the defendant to want to have a bench trial. That and the fact that juries are notoriously harsh judges of women who are accused of killing their children. So I think that combination must be the reason why they've requested a bench trial.
Yeah, it's got to be something behind closed doors we're not seeing. Maybe the judge gave a wink and a nod and made the defense think they got a better try with them. Now, Terry, many defense attorneys believe that the advantage in a retrial actually goes to the prosecutor. Do you think we're going to see the same trial in front of just a different jury, or do you think either side will change their game plan?
Well, you know, Brian, I think both sides should change their game plan based on what they've seen. I actually think it's pretty even. The defense obviously has a chance to see what the prosecution is going to bring, and the prosecution can improve their arguments, get better witnesses or more evidence, and make a better argument. So if anyone has a disadvantage, in my opinion, because the prosecution has the burden of proof, I think it might be harder to get witnesses to seem sincere.
All right. And an defendant is not afraid to speak his mind and question a judge's motives. Stay with us. One defendant in Kentucky was not afraid to voice his opinion in this crazy courtroom moment. Court Cam by Law&Crime Productions airs on the A&E network. Here's our founder, Dan Abrams.
We now take you to the Jefferson Circuit Court in Louisville, Kentucky.
And it's my right to speak what I need to speak on.
This is Bryce Rhodes, a man very familiar with the Louisville courts. He's been behind bars since he was charged with the murder of one man in 2016 and two teenage brothers a month later, fearing they would tell police of his involvement in the first crime. Since that time, Rhodes has been locked up awaiting trial, but moving forward has been challenging due to Rhodes' disruptive behavior in court and in jail. He's even gone so far as to threaten Judge Amber Wolf from behind a spit guard in 2016.
You can just bring him up right here. I think you know why. You know exactly why. Now, listen, stop talking. I'm going to keep talking because I don't want to have to see you back here for this.
What you think that? I don't give a fuck about none of that. I ain't do.
So you're saying you're going to find out where I live at?
You got something, I'll be up.
Okay. That was a threat against the court. I think that I'm asking the county attorney's office to take that into account and consider what to do with that.
After this incident, Rhodes was charged with terroristic threatening in the 3rd degree and intimidating a participant in the legal process. 4 years later, March of 2020, he's at it again.
Even though you show favoritism to the Commonwealth, you deny every motion I've ever filed in this courtroom, I'm still gonna, it's my right to file a pro se motion, and it's my right to speak what I need to speak on.
After Judge Charles Cunningham denies his motion to dismiss the murder charges, he questions the judge's motives.
Probably have some type of sexual relationship going on, or which I got going on, but I'm definitely gonna speak my mind.
Detective Detelli and I have no sexual relationship.
Now I'm talking about you and the prosecutor over, sir.
All right,
You denied all my motions. Every motion I filed, you didn't deny it.
I'm pretty sure I've denied the vast majority of pro se motions that have ever been filed.
Are you some type of racist? Or you got some type of sexual relationship going on? Which one is it?
Or are you just wrong in everything that you've made a motion for?
Are you a secret Ku Klux Klan member?
No, sir, I'm
Is that
not.
what you really are? Are you a secret Ku Klux Klan member?
Rhodes' attorney has clearly seen this before.
I'm not.
But like I said, the higher courts, they'll deal with it when time comes necessary.
That's exactly right.
Judge Cunningham takes it all in stride because Rhodes remains behind bars and faces life in prison if convicted of the crimes. As of this taping, Rhodes' cases are still awaiting trial.
And when we come back, Bill Cosby's defense team argues his appeal to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. Bill Cosby is scheduled to have his appeal heard by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court in December. Cosby is serving a 3 to 10-year prison sentence for sexual assault. The state's high court has agreed to review 2 key issues. One of the issues is over the trial judge's decision to allow other accusers to testify about their old claims. The second is whether the jury should have heard evidence that Cosby had given quaaludes to women in the past. Professor and law and crime expert Joseph Scott Morgan explains the effects of quaaludes could have on the women.
It puts the victim in a state almost of catatonia. They claim that with this drug there is kind of a semi-awareness that things are happening, but can you just imagine, just fathom for a moment, you have no control over your limbs. You have no control many times over your speech. You can't protest. This goes to serialized behavior, and that's certainly something that we study in forensics. Let's don't forget, Cosby is a serial perpetrator. This is something that has kind of, at least through the timelines, has been proven over and over and over again. The problem is this: there's not a lot of physical evidence tie back in this case, but this behavior where he is utilizing the quaaludes is very, very significant evidence.
Rapper Torey Lanes is being charged with assault 3 months after fellow rapper Megan Thee Stallion's public allegations. The savage rapper Megan Thee Stallion posted on Instagram that Torey Lanes had shot her in the foot during an altercation this summer. Torey Lanes faces a felony assault charge along with a felony charge for carrying an unregistered firearm in a vehicle. Torey Lanes allegedly shot at Megan's feet when she exited his SUV in the Hollywood Hills. If convicted, he faces a max sentence of 22 years and 8 months in prison. Megan Thee Stallion, recently performed at SNL last week, speaking out about a number of issues, one of which was violence towards black women. What was your reaction when you heard that she was shot at multiple times and struck in the heel?
Well, you know, Brian, I actually watched her on Saturday Night Live, and she was fantastic. She had two incredible performances, but what impressed me was the fact that she did have these powerful messages. As a Black woman, I really appreciated her advocating for not just Black women, but Black men as well. So there's no doubt in my mind that she was referring to what's going on in the world today, cases like Breonna Taylor, and she wants to make sure that people respect Black men and Black women.
All right, Dina, Torey Lanes is looking at 2 felony charges. You add on the immigration issues. How do you see this playing out for the Canadian rapper?
Not that well, to be honest. I mean, the police were there that night. They saw the gun in his car. And if she now cooperates, they're going to have overwhelming evidence to be able to convict him. I think, though, this is an interesting example of just domestic violence in general and how women are often, not even when they're celebrities, but in public, reluctant to cooperate and speak out. And it took her quite some time. Rihanna with Chris Brown years ago, the same thing. It's a common, not among just celebrities, but in general.
Exactly, and to add on to that, I think it's going to be extremely difficult because from my understanding, she posted on Instagram some of the images of the shot to her heel. Subsequently, they were taken off of Instagram, but as we all know, once you put it on the internet, it never really goes away. So it seems like the evidence is going to be gathering there. Dina Dahl, Terri Austin, I want to thank you both for joining us. I want to thank you, of course, for joining us on the Law and Crime Daily. We'll see you next time as we discuss justice in America. Thank you, have a good day, and we'll see you all tomorrow.